darling ones. So it's been a minute since my last Shakti Temple talk, so here we are again. And as usual, one of my very favorite topics, why devotion? Why devotion? And this topic is coming out of the completion of Navaratri. So I'm recording this upon the completion of the 9-night celebration to the goddess Durga, and in the Hindu tradition. And I've just really been thinking about this a lot, and this is kind of a lost aspect of our culture in the West, and what it really means. Like, what is it to live a life of devotion, and why bother? Right? And the first thing I want to say out the gate is that, first of all, devotion to me is about an offering of the self to something higher. Now, that something higher can be the divine, an aspect of the divine, whatever works for you, whatever inspires that experience and feeling of devotion, because devotion is really a feeling, but it's also an act that follows the feeling, an act of an offering or a surrendering to or a giving towards. And so it can be either to the divine, it can be to someone you love, it can be to a project, it can be to an art form. Devotion can take so many different shapes, right? It can take so many different forms, so many different relationships, but within devotion there is kind of inherently a relationship happening. And so I'm wanting to speak on devotion, particularly in the context of devotion to the divine, and devotion as an act, devotion as a sacred commitment, because we live in a time where it is becoming increasingly difficult to stay focused, and I feel like a lot of our energies, a lot of people's energies are scattered in a million different directions, and it's difficult. I'm observing the difficulty in committing to things, committing to relationships, committing to life paths, committing to work, committing to spiritual practice. This is just really up in my field right now, and it's something that for me has been one of the greatest hands down gifts of my life. And so I really want to talk about the importance of this. So why devotion? Why? Well, first of all, when we start to look at it from the spiritual place, so let's say devotion to a form of the divine. I am a Devi Bhakta, which means I'm a devotee of the goddess in the Hindu tradition. Shakti, Devi, many different names. And so when we enter into, like, particularly, I'm going to speak from my own experience, into the traditional tantric path, which means the classical tantric path, which means not necessarily the new neo-tantra thing based on just human relationships, but based on my relationship with the divine and my hopeful liberation from suffering as a result of that relationship. We enter into, so in traditional tantra, we have something called sadhana. And sadhana is a daily disciplined spiritual practice. And so what this is that we are creating the space in our lives. So let's say I want to have a relationship with Durga. I'm going to use her as the example because we just completed Navaratri, which is her 9-night festival. And so Durga is a very particular aspect of creation. She's the mother. She has this quality of protection, of running to her devotees who are in need. And literally her name translates to the reliever of difficulties. She actually takes our difficulties from us. So it's a very worthwhile relationship to cultivate. Although in pure devotion, we don't want to have a transactional relationship. Oh, I'll give my devotion in exchange for. We ideally want it to just be an outpouring because we love this aspect of creation, of the divine. And again, that can also be another human. So we can bring this into our intimate relationships as well. So the idea is that in order to create space, so to nourish any relationship, so let's bring this into the human realm. If I want to nourish the relationship with my beloved, I have to create the space in my life for that person. I have to offer and feed that relationship. If I have a garden, I have to water the plants. If I expect the fruits. And so as we enter into working with the divine, into working with the deity, we create the space in our life for that deity. That could be an altar, or it could just be simply the space, the time and space that we do our practice in, or our sadhana. And then the sadhana is like us watering that relationship. And so through our practice, we're giving effort. It's not just, oh, I surrender and I'm devotional. No, we're putting forth effort. It's like a hand reaching into the heavens and reaching for the divine. It's something in our hearts that's calling us to reach for something more, for something greater. And there's a feeling behind it, a beautiful feeling. And that feeling is devotion. Let me surrender myself to you. Let me surrender my lower aspects. And within that devotion, so like devotion I find to be a very feminine quality, you know, like the devotion of the mother to the child, or the wife to the husband, or, you know, this also shows up in the relationship of a disciple to the guru. So there's an element of surrender, but then there's an element also of service. You're serving that which you are devoted to. And then there's also a kind of more almost masculine element of commitment. Like, I am going to commit to this relationship. I am going to flow my energy consciously in this direction. In Tantra, we do that through the sadhana, through setting aside specific time every day to be in deep relationship with that deity. And what I find, or what I'll say, one of the greatest teachings I've gotten from my time in India and my time studying classical Indian dance, and from which is a very devotional art form, from studying traditional Tantra and being in sadhana, from studying classical yoga, Hatha yoga, is that we will only be met by the practices depending on how much we give. And I learned the power of commitment. I wouldn't be where I am today. I wouldn't have some of my most like hard-sought achievements behind my belt or under my belt if I didn't have that commitment, if I didn't just say, I commit. And let me tell you, I haven't always had the resources in place. I haven't had the safety net. Like, so often people are like, I'll commit if, like, I'm sure that this is going to work out, and no. You know, like this part of us that likes security. But there's a level within devotion where it's like, we commit, we give our sacred word, we give our sacred commitment, we just say yes because there's a feeling moving in us. We learn to trust that feeling, and then oftentimes we take the leap. There's a leap of faith. So I want to bring this in because this is a crucial aspect of the devotional path. When we start to walk the path of service to something greater than just our I, me, mine, ego self. In fact, usually that means in, you know, service of taming or putting in its place that aspect of self. We have to start to take a lot of leaps of faith. The divine will start asking that of us. But as we develop this relationship, and this is so true in our intimate relationships as well, as we take these leaps of faith into greater and greater intimacy, into greater and greater vulnerability, opening of the heart, or commitment to the path to where we start to see the results, this is where the gems come in. The things that have been the most nourishing spiritually, emotionally, physically, like on every level of my being in my life, are things that I took immense leaps of faith for, that I committed the whole of my energy. You know, it's not about safety. It's not about comfort. It's about something moving us to grow, something moving us beyond the boundaries that we currently find ourselves at. And devotion is that impetus to offer ourselves to that greater, even before we can maybe see what that even looks like. And it's this trust that there are greater hands weaving. And let me tell you, when we really throw ourselves into those greater arms, and we're often not just haphazardly, but like with sadhana, with clarity of commitment, with willingness to do the work, with just the fullness of our being on every level, the magic that starts to weave into our lives as we create that affirmation, that sacred intention with the universe to push us through that portal, to deliver us into that sacred intention, that sacred commitment through our devotion, is absolutely miraculous. I'm at a point now in my over decade long of practice in these traditions that I can just see the larger weaving so much more clearly. And the way, for example, my relationship with Ma, the way that she's woven my life, every little bit into perfection, the struggles and difficulties that I've had to very specifically overcome to get to the next phase of my soul evolution, and then the grace that's come in, and the blessings, and the teachers who've showed up at just the right time, and the this and the that, and it's freaking phenomenal when we jump into the river of life. And we might not have all the things in line. Like, I can't tell you, I'm one of those people I generally have enough. I don't tend to have a lot of excess, like in terms of financial or wealth or this. I always have enough though. And it's just like, it's one step into the other. And at this point in my life, this is what's leading. This commitment to this path, this commitment to her, and that can be to whatever, that can just be to life. And this is how I show up in all of my relationships now, in my relationship with my spiritual practice, my relationship with the form of the divine that moves me in that devotion. The devotion's a crucial ingredient because we're not going to show up for our practice if it's dry and devoid of feeling. We're going to show up there when there's something moving in us that's greater than the self to show up there. That's why devotion is so crucial. And let's bring this into intimate relationship. We live in this day and age where everyone wants it to just be easy and feel good and like taste this and that, and lack of commitment and lack of devotion. And at the end of the day, the real richness of having gone through maybe challenge and made it to the other side, and to really have forged a foundation and built something that will last, is starting to fade away. And I think that that's really it's sad. And this is true with spiritual paths. Like, people are just like, woo, like preoccupied with a million different things, and they've lost the thread. It is said, and I believe this with my whole heart, that we can be jack of many trades and master of none, or we can reach mastery in this lifetime. And at the end of the day, what's actually going to be more fulfilling? Like, I can do a million different spiritual paths, like take this and that and this and that and weave my own thing, but I haven't gone to any depth. The depth happens when we commit to a path that's actually going to lead us somewhere. And we have to walk down that path step by step by step, and we might come across obstacles and we might come across challenges, and that's not when you bail on that path and go to the next one. That's when you grow. That's when you expand. And in fact, the leaving things too soon because of difficulty, because we have this belief that everything should just be convenient and easy if it's aligned, human realm, no, that's not how it works here. We are here to work out some karma. And when we really commit to these deeper paths in relationship, in our work, in our dharma, in our spiritual pursuit, life is going to show up in a whole other way for us. When it sees that we're not going to just bow down to difficulty, that we're not just going to run away, that we have this inner force, this something larger that's carrying us through. I will say going to India every other year for the past 10 years of my life, leaving homes behind, mostly usually dissolving my home, taking the leap of faith, going there with just enough money to like make this happen, studying this like very niche art form. And it just like, it's not been easy, but it's the most rewarding thing I've ever done in my life. That dance, the tantric path. And so I just want to share this with you as inspiration, that commitment is not something to be poo-pooed. Devotion is not something to be poo-pooed. These really deep and rich paths are not meant to be like sampled. No, they're meant to be like our whole selves given into. That is the spiritual path. Take me. Take all of me as I am, my challenges, my beauty, my like all of me. And when we show up in this way, in this devotion, we also show up as we are in the moment. It's not like, oh, I'm angry or I got in a fight with my partner today, like I don't want to do my sadhana. No, we come as we are. And that's the offering, that's the gift. We might spend half an hour in meditation and we're just thinking about what we're going to say when we see our partner again, like to be right or whatever. But at least we did it. At least we showed up. We continue to show up as we are in our humility and in our glory and in our fullness. So I hope, my hope is that this is inspiring, that we start to cultivate more resiliency in our devotion and in our ability to make these sacred commitments, and that we use that ingredient of faith to trust when something's calling us, when life is calling us forward in something that feels bigger than ourselves. Usually there's going to be a leap of faith involved. And when we set our sacred commitment, that becomes the container that we take that leap with. And we offer ourselves with that devotion. And that is when those moments are when the greatest growth happens in our lives. So I just encourage those moments. I encourage steadfast resolve in our sacred commitments, because these are the paths that are going to be the most rewarding when we are on our deathbed, which every single one of us is guaranteed in this lifetime. Those are going to be the things that give us that sense of a life well lived. So that's why devotion. So much love to all of you.